And welcome back to Global Speedrun Association. Some more Super Mario Odyssey action coming your way. Today, joining me on commentary for LilAggy versus PhilliePhan is Brisquat. What's going on, Brisquat?
Not much. What about you?
I'm doing great. It's been a very exciting day for Super Mario Odyssey speedrunning. Indeed, some very close races, some interesting results. Chaos Pringle coming in with the world record in GSA runs, which of course is a incredible feat. Was on world record pace right up until Bowser's. Very exciting races to watch today.
Yeah, for sure. I'm excited for this race.
Me
I
as
think it'll
well.
definitely be an interesting one.
I know these guys personally. They're very good friends of mine in this community. LilAggy obviously has been grinding this game since day one. PhilliePhan was a part of his kind of like group, and they ran this game together for quite a while. Did end up taking a little bit of a hiatus from April onwards, but has been making a bit of a revival in the last month or so playing this game. So, he maybe is a little bit rusty, but anything can happen in a race situation. So it'll be interesting to see how this goes down.
For sure. All right. So, heading into Cap Kingdom, pretty straightforward linear kingdom. Not too much going on here, but there's some interesting stuff that will be going on that we'll point out. Ooh, PhilliePhan taking a bonk right at the beginning, allowing
Unfortunately,
Aggie.
missing lantern skip there. Going to be costing him
Yeah.
about 2 seconds.
Aggie also did a cool little first-person strat there. When he pulled the lever, he went into first person, and it just saves a bit of time with camera panning cutscene.
Yeah.
PhilliePhan unfortunately didn't get it.
Interesting
So
physics about this game that you don't really know unless you kind of dug into them. One of them being that whenever you initiate dialogue with a NPC, or whenever something like a bridge transitioning needs to happen, the game pans the camera to a particular location before that cutscene or that that NPC dialogue is initiated. So by going into first person, you actually make the camera snap to that location rather than pan, which does make it a little bit faster.
for sure. Ooh, PhilliePhan missing left side here, but it's looking like he's backing it up decently well.
Yeah, unfortunately not an optimal jump from PhilliePhan on the left side setup. LilAggy capitalizing on that, going to be making the left side jump and going to be pulling ahead coming out of Cap Kingdom.
Yes. This looks like almost exactly a 10-second difference between the runners out of out of Cap. So definitely not a huge lead by Aggie, but he is going to be getting the upper hand out of Cap here.
Yeah, and of course, any little amount of time save that you can get is going to matter.
For sure.
Now, both of these runners playing on 1.0, which of course is the fastest version of the game. So you're going to see some first moon skip coming from both of these runners. Aggie setting it up first, jumping across the water, doing an up throw just for safety, a little bit of height, but is going to opt for the wall jump variation. With this new wet FMS, as it's being called now, I suppose, it is actually really free to get around the wall. Of course, as I say that, PhilliePhan taking an unfortunate bonk. Commentators curse coming in strong right at the beginning of the race.
Ooh, having a lot of spaghetti being spilled on this FMS, but ooh, more.
Oh no, the
More
invisible
spaghetti.
wall getting in the way there. Not able to set it up very well, but did finally get it. Third time's the charm.
Something interesting also, most of you probably know this, but we used to do first moon skip on the rock that has the first moon in it. However, it was very finicky and inconsistent, and people didn't really like doing it. So fortunately, we found a much easier and more consistent way to do it that also happens to be a little bit faster. So it all works out really nicely.
Indeed it does. And I think that there was a little bit of resistance to the idea of a new FMS. I feel like a lot of people were kind of hard pressed to let go something that they had spent so much time trying to master for something
sure.
so easy like this. But at the end of the day, if it is going to save some time, you're not going to pass it up. So you don't
Sure.
really see the rock method anymore.
All right, so both runners finishing up the Madame Brutal fight here, both of them executed it very well with no issues, and looks like Aggie will be maintaining his lead out of Cascade.
Yep, he is the first one out of the Madame Brutal fight, up top a high cliff, and then just a quick jaunt down underneath the waterfall basin, setting up for a treasure chest clip here. Does look pretty good. Did get the up warp there, and is through the rock, so he's going to be on his way. Now, PhilliePhan right behind, going to be executing the same movement here, getting on top of the cliff, and then down into the waterfall basin. We'll see if he goes for the chest clip as well. Likely that we might not, just because, as I mentioned, he is coming off a little bit of a hiatus, but it does look like he's setting it up. Gets the backflip.
Good. Looks like he got a nice upward, and he does get it.
And the clip. There you go.
Yeah, and that same concept is also used in Wooded Kingdom with the moon clipping. However, this chest clip is easier because you get a lot more leeway with upward warping than diagonal or horizontal warping.
Correct.
So it's easier to clip through a ceiling than it is to clip through a wall.
And this trick comes down to knowing about the physics of the game, the little nuances in the game as well. Essentially, the game enters a different state when you are within the moon get animations, where collision detection is completely turned off for walls. So if you can manipulate Mario in a way that he is engaging in a wall or a ceiling or something like that, in the same moment that he is going for like getting a moon, then you can kind of phase through walls in a way that allows you to clip through them. So this is coming in handy in Cascade, particularly here, as well as in Wooded Kingdom. It is essential to get the nut clip in order to save a significant amount of time in that kingdom as well. You also see it in Snow Kingdom sometimes. Doesn't save as much time in any percent as it does in other categories, but that being said, it is a tiny optimization utilizing this physics.
For sure. So looking like PhilliePhan had a little bit of trouble making his way to this moon, but he gets it. Aggie finishing the Dune Moon, and we are now coming up on the Dram Strat.
Aggie just barely clearing that archway there by the looks of it. Did end up taking a bonk, but not going to be a big deal. Facing his camera down to manipulate where this platform is going to be. You can see that it is just going to move out of the way just in time for him to set up this Dram Strat. And getting the initial early capture warp there, that is one of the most triggering things for me in this entire Sand Kingdom.
Yes, for sure. He just shook his controller a tad too early there, which made him capture the bullet bill too early. But there he goes. He's actually opting to skip that crate moon in favor of the notes moon at the end. Saves a little bit of time if done optimally, and that's what you see most runners at that level going for nowadays.
Certainly. Any runner that is doing the Sphinx clip route is going to skip out on the boxes. You still see the crate moon, or I suppose the box moon, or whatever you would like to call it. You still see it being done by 1.2 players because the Sphinx clip is not really an option on that version.
PhilliePhan missing the Dram Strat, unfortunately. Will have to climb up this pillar and make his way up there. And you see PhilliePhan actually opting to hit the crates moon as opposed to the notes moon. Kind of interesting.
Interesting development here. Might be skipping out on the Sphinx room entirely, perhaps. Also, Aggie going for double clip here, getting the second clip on the first try, which is exactly what you need to make this strategy work. And now we'll see if PhilliePhan goes for some Sphinx clip as well. It appears that he has not attempted Sphinx clips in runs in the past in GSA tournaments, so might opt to just skip out on that for safety.
Yeah, for sure, but we'll see.
Rolling up to the Sphinx. Does look like he's going to approach it, but just going to talk to the Sphinx. Probably the safe play there.
For sure. Sphinx clip is famous, or I suppose infamous, for being very difficult to perform optimally. It really only saves time if you get it within the first few tries, so if he's not comfortable with it, it's probably the better move to just talk to the Sphinx.
Certainly, and roll cancel clips in general tend to be rather finicky in this game. So
Yeah, for
if you're
sure.
not fully comfortable with them, it's best to just opt out most of the
For
time.
sure. And it can be especially difficult with the Sphinx there because, as you notice, the camera actually locks into a certain position that you cannot move. So you kind of have to work with it there. So, all right, Aggie actually getting a pretty solid notes there. And he will be finishing out the Sand Kingdom.
Yeah, he's got to be happy with that. That was a very solid execution of the Notes Moon. Not getting it in one cap throw, but again, that's a really hard strategy to do, so can't blame him for that. Getting it on the
Yeah.
second one and on his way to the next kingdom now.
So we see PhilliePhan doing the Jaxi skip and making his way up to these chests. You see that he actually grabbed both those chests there, the one with the moon as well as the one with the coins. He just wants to grab those extra 50 coins because he wants to make sure he has enough to buy both shop moons, the one in Wooded and the one in Snow. Without that chest with the coins in it, it's very hard to get enough coins to be able to buy both those moons.
Especially on 1.0. 1.2 has a workaround. There are hidden coin hint arts throughout the kingdoms that have been released by Nintendo over time, but 1.0 does not have that ability granted to them. So you do have to kind of make up the coins elsewhere if you're going to skip the Sphinx Room on 1.0. So opting for the Sphinx Room is probably a good idea in Philly's mind.
For sure. So Aggie now making his way through Lake Kingdom. I do not believe we will be seeing any lake clip ideas from either of these runners. I've never seen either of these runners go for that. So they'll probably be opting the safer route to just do normal lake.
Yeah, we do see LilAggy rolling right by the lake clip here. Not a surprise. About the only people who do go for that clip in runs, especially in race settings, are probably like the top 5 runners. So it doesn't surprise me that we're not going to see any lake clip here. It does save about 6 seconds optimally, but that is on like a very first try setup, which is not easy to do.
For sure.
So LilAggy is just swimming through Lake Kingdom here, grabbing a couple quick moons before he faces off with Rango.
Yes, and that is the main time save if you do decide to do lake clip, is skipping this Rango, which has a lot of cutscenes connected to it. However, like Danger said, lake clip really will only save you time if you do it optimally, so especially in a race setting, really probably a better idea to just opt for the safer route.
Yeah, that's kind of the name of the game with any percent right now. Not a whole lot is being discovered as far as tricks go, so optimizers and routers are basically looking at ways that we can cut out some of the things that we can't skip, we can't control. Currently, the any percent route has about 30 minutes worth of cutscenes, moon animations, things that you can't skip, can't change, can't control. So by kind of phasing those out and replacing them with other moons, of course, that gives you an opportunity to optimize rather than wait through cutscenes. So that is kind of the idea behind Lake Clip. It's the idea behind doing the spiritless route in Wooded Kingdom. It's more under the runner's control how much time is being saved exactly.
Yes, for sure. So PhilliePhan now making his way up to Rango, and LilAggy will be making his way into Wooded. Now Wooded is very hard kingdom, especially with the addition of the nut clip route. This can really make or break a run here. So potentially some catch-up potential for PhilliePhan here, depending on whether or not Aki can have a good Wooded here. So we'll see what happens.
You know, Aggie's been telling me that he is having a little bit of frustrations with Wooded Kingdom in particular. Especially this very first moon. In fact, not getting the proper angle to roll towards this rock. He is going to grab it fine this time, thankfully. Yes. But yeah, Wood Kingdom just is a kingdom where big mistakes can really, for sure.
For sure, yeah. And I can say from experience, I feel his pain on that first moon, getting the angle to get the rock there. It can be rather frustrating, so it's a good thing that he got it there with no issues.
Initiating this shot moon. Shot moon is not necessarily very fast, but because this one is actually just out in the open, not a big deal to just kind of grab the shot moon on your way by.
For sure, yeah. We'll be seeing 2 shot moons being grabbed in this run, so that looks good. I think Aggie did get the nut clip, and he gets it very
Successful.
nice.
Wee Hoo achieved by LilAggy here. Now just has to achieve this kind of tricky out of bounds movement. Can see that the cat throw setup not working in his favor there. Now has to do a very scary wall jump to grab the moon out of bounds. Gonna be able to do that. Has to grab it at a particular angle, otherwise you will kind of clip back inbounds and semi-soft lock yourself. But is able to avoid that, make his way up the ramp and out of the scariest portion of Wooded Kingdom, in my opinion.
Yeah.
So pretty solid execution by Aggie here.
It's worth noting that if he fell down there, he wouldn't have just died. He would have actually fallen into the deep woods, which is worse than dying. It loses a bunch of time, so luckily he was able to avoid that. Like we were saying before, this is where moon clipping really shines. I believe this nut clip route saves about 30 seconds over the old wooded route that we used to do. So it is very, very essential in this kingdom to get this moon clip.
Certainly,
So
especially in a run as optimized as any percent.
ooh, PhilliePhan taking a bit of a bonk there. Luckily, it's not that big of a climb, so it doesn't lose that much time. Oh, we'll actually see PhilliePhan not opting to do the nut clip at all, actually opting to do the old wooded route instead.
And again, potentially the rust showing a little bit there. When he was running this game last, the nut clip route didn't even exist, so probably just sticking to his guns, sticking with what he knows.
Yes, certainly. So he will be losing time over Aggie right just by default there, but it is better than going for it and perhaps falling in the deep woods. If he's not comfortable with it, it's probably smarter for him to just do what he knows.
Yeah, I'm not going to argue there. That's probably the safest bet. It does require him going into this pipeway, which, you know, infamously can eat your inputs. Inputs are delicious for fuzzies.
Yes, certainly. Yeah, that room can be scary because it is on a cycle. So if your movement is bad at any part, you can miss the cycle and potentially lose a lot of time. But PhilliePhan looks like he performed it with no problems. Very clean, actually.
Yeah, you do like to see that room being done. It's very stylish when you can get the first cycle on everything there. LilAggy going to be approaching that room himself, just setting himself up to skip Spewart, hopping off the tower and over to this nut at around the bend before going into the pipeway himself.
Yeah, and this is another pro of nut clip route, is that since we didn't get this pipeway moon earlier, we can actually get the 2 moons in here instead, and the one in the nut to skip out on Spewart and save about 5 seconds, I believe, optimally.
Yeah, if you do this optimally, optimal is very difficult to perform because there's a lot of moving parts to getting off of the tower and getting to the nut around the bend. That being said, 5 seconds is about how much time you can save. And then when you factor in the fact that this room doesn't actually require you to exit, you can warp directly to the Odyssey, it does seem like a very tempting way to finish off the kingdom indeed.
Yeah, for sure. All right, so we're going to see PhilliePhan taking a bit of a safer approach to the flower road skip, messing it up a bit on the first try there. It's safer and easier. So
Yeah, and still going to save you a little bit of time over activating the flower road itself.
yeah, for sure. All right, so Aggie will be Wooded Kingdom. Cloud King on the surface, it kind of simple and actually quite a few strats
Happens that you don't realize he's taking, kind of grab the hats as soon as they're available when Bowser throws them out. But another thing happening is the hats being thrown out are as you capture them, you kind of move in behind Bowser, and that's going to set up a optimal manipulation strategy, which forces Bowser to fly to a further platform and makes the fight just a little bit more optimal in total.
Yeah, certainly.
All right, first phase approaching here for LilAggy, grabbing the hat, and you notice very noticeably moving in behind Bowser. That's going to send him 2 platforms away. Aggie rolls over to this other one. Bowser only hops 1 platform. PhilliePhan, I'm not sure what just happened here. What is going on?
He narrowly avoided death there, actually falling on the jump up to the spewer, but he's luckily able to avoid death there. Even though the backup was a bit slow, it might have been actually faster to die there. It was definitely more stylish to avoid the death there.
I think he might have just got lucky, probably bonked on that platform and then landed on one of the kind of beams holding up the platform. So yeah, it did look like he had a little bit of trouble getting back up. So unfortunate situation for Philly, but dying there would have just sent him back to that doorway. So not the biggest loss if he were to fall.
So Aggie finishing up the Cloud Kingdom, moving into Lost. Lost is, if it's done good, definitely a very fun kingdom to watch. There's a lot of stuff going on. Oh, but he actually takes a bonk there, right as I. Of course, the commentator's curse coming into effect.
Yep.
Luckily, he will respawn right at the start here, so it's not too big of a loss. However, that is pretty unfortunate.
You hate to see it. You know, Lost Kingdom is a scary place to be. As soon as you think you're safe, it'll get you. Meme Tree, of course, being one of the trickier jumps and especially one of the hardest things to learn as you kind of approach this game. It's definitely essential, though, as a beginning runner. You know, you learn about Klepto and you learn about having to avoid that, and the most viable strategy of that, of course, being the Meme Tree jump itself. So not really anything you can do to having to avoid learning that strategy saves so much time that it's not worth avoiding. But, you know, even at the top level, you can see that some things can go wrong. LilAggy taking a bonk on that platform and falling into the poison.
Yes. However, like I said, it's right at the beginning, so didn't lose too much time, but it is pretty unfortunate to see. So that does give PhilliePhan a little bit of a chance to make up some ground here. PhilliePhan now entering the fight. Executing that first phase, no problem. Actually not diving behind Bowser, so he will not be opting to go for the Bowser manipulation strat.
LilAggy going for the cage triple there and nailing the strategy just fine. Able to blow up the cage on top of the tree, underneath the bridge now, and making the jump back on top. Very clean execution. Just the death at the beginning costing Aggie some time, but otherwise, very nice Lost Kingdom from Aggie.
Yes, very nice indeed. He will now be making his way into Metro. Metro, one of the longer kingdoms in this game. In the speedrun, it's the kingdom with the most moons you have to collect. So we kind of have to make the most out of that. Is try and find the best routing for how many moons you have to collect here. But it's just based on the amount. It's inevitable that we're going to be spending a lot of time here, regardless.
Yeah, there's only so much you can do. A common question is, Isn't this not like Super Mario 64? You just need 70 stars to get to the end, right? You just need 124 moons to get to the end. Not quite. The game flow is a little bit different. The amount of moons that you need to progress is dependent on the kingdom and not on the total itself. So you can see that there are some hollowed out circles at the top of Aggi's screen there, signifying how many moons he needs to progress before he's allowed to leave Metro. So it's in our best interest to find the best, fastest 20 moons in Metro Kingdom in order to leave. So that being the case, we do have to spend quite a bit of time here.
Definitely. And also, just adding to the time we spend here, there's also a long boss fight that is unavoidable that we will be doing here.
Yeah, unfortunately, no way of getting your 20 moons in Night Metro. There just isn't enough to go around, so we do have to face this Mecha Wiggler fight.
Yes, and as we'll see shortly, this Mecha Wiggler is one of the few instances of RNG in the run. The amount of RNG in this run, I can basically count on one hand. There's not a lot, but Mecha Wiggler is one of the bigger examples of it, as we'll see here.
Yeah, and in a game full of technical precision, it's what makes it such a fun speed game, in my opinion, is the fact that, you know, if a mistake happens, if something goes wrong, it's basically your fault. And a good example of that actually being PhilliePhan here, going for that triple jump strategy to get the golden cage and messing it up just a little bit, taking a bonk, going to have to go for this backup in the stone cage. Unfortunate situation for PhilliePhan there. But LilAggy approaching what we said is the RNG portion of this run. Now, just about any second cycle can be finished in a 2-cycle pattern, but because of the hitboxes of this boss, not every pattern goes according to plan.
Yeah, and some patterns are faster to execute than others. But like Danger said, all of them can be done in 2 cycles. So we'll see now. The Wiggler basically goes in cycles of running at you and then shooting fireballs at you and then crawling up the wall. Our goal is to finish him off in only 2 of those cycles as opposed to 3, which Aggie did beautifully there.
That was very well executed. Now, there was a little bit of crossover at the end of that pattern. That's usually when you, because the hitboxes tend to kind of corrupt each other and get in the way. Luckily, Aggie firing off those shots and not facing any opposition from the Wiggler, taking him down handily before he's even able to stop moving, in fact.
For sure. So it's looking like they're about a Night Metro apart right now. So Aggie will now be entering Day Metro, and a interesting thing about Day Metro is that there's not a whole lot that can go wrong in terms of big mistakes. A majority of the time that you'll be losing or gaining here is due to small optimizations, as opposed to, big mistakes that you're making.
Certainly. And this is kind of one of those kingdoms where, as a beginning runner, you're following along with the route. You might find it hard to believe that the top runners are saving so much time for seemingly the same movement, but it really does come down to just fine-tuning everything.
Yes, PhilliePhan, unfortunately taking a bit of a fall there, will have to make his way back to this pylon. Backed it up pretty nicely there, and Aggie pulled off the scooter clip there.
On the drive-by, too.
Yes, as you see. Essentially, you're supposed to drive in there by capturing the human and then driving the RC cart in there. However, with motion controls, you can just barely tilt Mario far enough to just grab that moon inside there. And Aggie pulled it off very well there. He didn't even need to set it up at all. He just drove right by it and grabbed it, which is the most optimal way to do it.
That's the way you like to see. And again, that kind of plays into how Metro Kingdom goes. You know, there's an optimal way of doing a trick, and there's usually some sort of slower, safer backup strat, or, you know, sometimes the spaghetti just kind of factors in, and it can be hard to pull off everything absolutely optimally. So that being said, doing things the most optimal way can be hard when you have to combine all of these tiny little sections together.
For sure. And as well, we see Aggie going and getting these musicians first as opposed to last. Just a tiny optimization there, saves about 2 seconds. just getting the moons in a different order than usual.
And the idea behind that is that you eliminate one kind of loading zone cutscene associated with one of the sub areas that we're going to see Aggie enter at the very end. Instead of leaving this sub area via the door, he can warp directly to the Odyssey, and that's what saves the most time in there.
Yes. So while these cutscenes and this boss fight's finishing up, just like to quickly mention our sponsor, Vi.gg. You can type !bet in the chat to learn more information. You can bet on matches and possibly win some money. Of course, making sure that you are the legal age and residence to do so.
Yeah, don't want to get yourself in trouble, you know? You got to follow the rules still.
For sure.
But it is a good way, if you are, of course, legally allowed, it is a good way to support these runners, show them some love, show them that you believe in them, and of course spur them on. It adds a little extra layer of excitement to the action that you're already seeing.
Yeah, for sure. So PhilliePhan will now be finishing up Night Metro here. Aggie, almost done with Day Metro. Just got a few more moons to collect here.
Getting the bullseye, very nice. Now he's going to be hopping off the rail and into the sub area with the people. And this will be his last stop in Day Metro before he is able to leave.
Yes. Oh, actually missed the lever there. Tried to home into it, however, since the lever was not on screen, Happy didn't home into it.
Yeah, another one of those weird physical nuances that this game has. Sometimes the game doesn't register things as existing unless they are visibly on the screen. That being a situation where that is the case. PhilliePhan going for the scoot clip drive-by there, but actually missing the timing on it. So going to have to back it up, set it up, and does get it on the second try.
Yeah, the backup was very clean as well. So that was nice to see from PhilliePhan. And yeah, this game can be a little weird with the capture warps. If the object is not on screen, it might just not register it. That is actually a perfect example. PhilliePhan trying to get that capture warp there. However, since the little pole was not on screen, Cappy did not home in to capture it.
That's right. You really have to make a conscious effort to rotate your camera so that that pylon is on screen before you try and attempt the capture warp there. PhilliePhan not getting the camera around in time to make that happen.
PhilliePhan going for the musician's early route as well. Something that we definitely won't be, but I would just like to mention is that there actually is a faster route for Metro that you can do. Is a sub area with bullet bills and a hard vector jump. However, it is very difficult. We're definitely not going to be seeing that in the route anytime soon. But I did want to point that out as just a little fun piece of trivia.
And we do talk about things like late clip being an option for some top runners and maybe not an option for some runners who have not practiced it. But this bullet building reroute that we are talking about in Metro has actually been theorized for a very long time, but is so difficult and so precise to do that not any top runner is actually going for it at this point in time. So definitely one of the hardest tricks to pull off in the game at an optimal level.
For sure, yeah. And even if you do go for it, you really won't save time unless you perform it extremely optimally. So,
that's absolutely right.
Yeah. Alright, Aggie now making his way into Snow Kingdom.
Jumping up into the banisters here, that signals to us that he is going to be going for Snowdram.
Yes, a very precise jump at the end of this kingdom that we will see him going for. Most top runners, or most runners in general, if they're going for it, are usually pretty consistent at it. However, there's always that chance, since it's such a precise jump, that you can possibly fail it.
LilAggy flying through this room, getting that triple jump very nicely into the dive without even a cap throw, making that fast cycle for the Taifu at the end of the room, and then blowing all of these spinies away. That is textbook stuff from Aggie in this room.
Yes, that was very nice. He executed that so well. He was able to stay on the fast cycle the whole time. Um, Another unfortunate, similar to the pipeways in Wooded, is that even just a tiny movement mistake in that room can cause you to lose a decent amount of time because you will be missing the optimal cycle.
And not to mention this room filled with instant death poisons, so missing the cycle and trying to be gung-ho about it and trying to save yourself anyway can potentially lead to a death and going back to the
Yeah,
beginning of the room.
we actually saw Aggie take a little bit of damage there because of the slippery ice. He kind of slid into the Goomba. Not a huge deal whatsoever. Yeah, this snow can be pretty punishing. Um, there's a lot of opportunities to spill some spaghetti, but it's looking like Aggie is getting it done, no problem.
Yep, just a couple minor mistakes. I mean, the real big time sink coming up in Snow Kingdom, yet to happen for Aggie, that being the Snow Dram jump, of course. So after he is done with this sub area, going to be on his way into the shop, buy one moon, and then warp back to the Odyssey, where we're going to see if he can pull out some magic here.
Yes. The most punishing thing about Snowdram is that if you mess it up, there's no quick backup moon that you can grab. You are forced to warp back up and try it again. Every Snowdram failed attempt is about a 20-second time sink guaranteed. There's no faster moon that you can go to back it up.
That's why it is so daunting as a beginning player to ever look at this and think, you know, this might go in my runs one day, because the risk to reward factor is just so great. But Aggie getting it on the first try here, very clean execution from Aggie, not going to be losing that 20 seconds that we were just talking about, instead saving about 8 over the Snow Dramless route.
Yes, beautiful, beautiful. Yeah, Snow Kingdom in general, just a pretty slow kingdom. Kind of forced to get a lot of these slow story moons, just because there's not a whole lot of options. So, yeah, we kind of want any time save we can get there.
Certainly. There is a lot of fast moons available in Snow after you've achieved World Peace, but of course, getting to Bound Bowl, doing Bound Bowl, all of that is extremely slow and not worth it.
Yeah, definitely. So PhilliePhan making his way to the shop first, which signals that he will not be going for Snowdram. He won't be getting that time save, however, perhaps the smarter move if he's not comfortable with Snow.
Playing it safe. Can't really blame him. Again, we did mention that Snowdram is a scary thing to try and set yourself up for.
So Aggie making his way through Seaside. Seaside has a lot of water movement with the fish that can actually be pretty difficult. There is, unfortunately, the developers decided that bonking as Mario wasn't enough. They actually wanted to make it so that you can bonk in the water as the fish. Just as a little cherry on top there. Every fish bonk, I believe, loses about a second. So
Yeah.
those can really add up.
Not quite as punishing as a regular bonk outside of the water, but still very annoying to deal with. And when you're trying to move fast and boost your way through as a fish, it can be very frustrating to have to deal with those. LilAggy approaching the last kind of remaining portion of the dry section of Seaside, setting up for the Rocket Flower refresh, getting both ground pounds nicely here.
Yes, that was very nice. Basically, the idea behind that is, for some reason, if you do a spin throw and then a ground pound, with a rocket flower, the timer on the rocket flower, for whatever reason, just won't run out, and you can kind of just prolong the timer on the rocket flower.
An interesting little physics trick that we found, and does make its way into the any percent run. Saves about 1 second over the older method of doing this area, which of course is just using a nearby gushion to blast across the water.
Yeah. there's actually another way to do the rocket flower refresh, which involves doing an up throw 2 frames before grabbing that moon. However, of course, as the name suggests, the 2 refresh, very precise. You won't see anyone going for that in their runs.
Yeah, maybe only somebody as crazy as the very top runners might attempt such a thing. But again, at a 60 frame per second game, that instant refresh that we were talking about is really, really hard to pull off with only a 2 frame window. So do not expect many runners to go for that.
So we see PhilliePhan making his way through this Ranga room. He'll be getting this moon over here to replace the Snowdram moon. His movement was relatively clean there. Actually not going to be losing that much time over the Snowdram route there.
Yeah, got to be happy with that Snow Kingdom. Just a couple bonks here and there, not too big a deal. And as LilAggy leaves Seaside, PhilliePhan on his way there. LilAggy approaching Luncheon Kingdom now, very much like Dame Metro, I would say, in the sense that following along with the route is relatively straightforward, but every single movement that you make in this kingdom can be optimized at a higher level, and it can be very easy to kind of hemorrhage time away as the kingdom progresses. One good example here, LilAggy going for the salt pile triple here. The optimal way of getting up here is the way that LilAggy just did it. There are a couple of slower backup methods, but that being the very first one to kind of demonstrate just how easy it is to kind of lose a little bit of time a bunch of times over time.
For sure, yeah. Yeah, that salt triple actually looks deceptively easy. It's actually harder than it looks. It's pretty precise. A lot of bonk potential, but luckily Aggie was able to get it no problem.
Then on his way to this Spirit refight, or I suppose in Aggie's case, first fight. Only difference here being the size of the arena. Not a problem, of course, if you're not letting Spirit move anywhere.
Yeah. Unfortunately, we haven't yet found a fast way to remove that Spirit fight from the route. Unfortunately, we just kind of have to deal with it. There is a theorized route that does skip Spirit there. However, it's just a bit too slow to be used currently.
It's simply not fast enough, and also an extremely weird setup for the entire thing to work, so not going to be seeing it in any runs in the future.
Yeah, for sure. I do possibly see some BTT potential for that route, possibly. However, it's not going to be being used by runners in their runs anytime soon, for sure.
RTA viability not really on the table as we know it yet.
Yeah, for sure. But you never know. I mean, Lake Clip used to be one of those routes that was considered BTT only, but lo and behold, top runners are now going for it. So who knows? Maybe in the future we'll be seeing it as the time gets better and better, and as runners get more and more desperate for time save. But as we mentioned, it's slower anyway. So unless we found a faster way to do it, it's off the table for now.
Yeah, you essentially need to find a reliable way of making these things happen. Lake Clip was originally thought to be an impossible trick until recently. There has been some setups being developed. You know, as more people work on things over time, the kind of the keys start turning and the locks start and we start to figure out what makes these tricks tick. You know, in the days of Shaden, in fact, which is as far back as like April or March or April, I suppose, it was theorized that Snowdram was impossible and there was no RTA viability at all. But again, we've over time figured out its consistency, figured out how it works, and now it's on the table for all the top runners.
No!
LilAggy, oh my goodness, taking a fall in the Forks room here.
Forks room, very cursed, as we see here. Yeah, Forks room and Luncheon in general can be very devastating. lots of upsets can happen, as we just saw there. Aggie taking a death. That is very unfortunate. Probably lost him around 25 or so seconds there. Pretty
Yep, and
unfortunate indeed.
it gets worse the higher you get up in this room as well. We've seen
Yeah.
some world pace record runs die here. So, not a very uncommon place for things to go wrong. Combination of motion controls, camera manipulation, and diving towards captures, all of those things added together make that a very tricky room to do precisely. Things can go
Yeah.
wrong easily, and, LilAggy paying the price for it.
For sure. So we now will see LilAggy doing a nifty little 1.0 exclusive here, the turnip clip. Essentially, the idea here is that instead of going and grabbing one of those pan bros and getting the PhilliePhan taking a bonk on Salt Triple there.
Going
Pretty
for the safe
unfortunate.
backup.
But yeah, instead of getting the pan bro and breaking the cheese and pulling the lever and getting a kind of long panning cutscene, instead we're just going to use to kind of push the pan bro into the little moon cage there, saving a bit of time. Like I said, 1.0 exclusive trick cannot be done on 1.2.
Of course, not the intended way by the developers to get this moon. There is a switch hidden underneath some cheese bricks nearby that you're supposed to use a pan bro to reveal. But that way is not only slower, but potential for RNG. The pan bros flinging their hammers in wildly different directions every time you do this trick. Again, this scheme doesn't have very much RNG, so by eliminating that, we are able to make things a little bit more consistent. Fortunately, 1.2 runners do not have a choice. They do have to go for the cheese RNG there. So the difference between it is about 6 to 8 seconds, depending on just how optimal you can get that cheese.
Yeah, for sure. I'd say the time saved with turnip clip will probably be even larger than that, just because it's so hard to get a nice and fast cheese lever movement, because it's just so random and difficult to do.
Personally, as a 1.2 runner, I wish I had the option to do the turnip clip myself.
Me too, for sure. However, I of course don't want to downplay turnip clip. It's definitely not an easy trick either.
Yeah,
but it
not
is
easy.
Yeah.
However,
it's just
more
consistent. Yeah. All right, so Aggie now leaving Luncheon Kingdom. Pretty smooth overall, despite that one really unfortunate death in Forks. However, pretty clean Luncheon movement to somewhat make up for it.
Yeah, just the Forks room giving Aggie a little bit of troubles there. But going to be moving on through to Ruined Kingdom. Now, of course, we say this is an auto-scroller kingdom, but anything is possible. We've seen some weird things happen in this kingdom, in this particular tournament, in fact. So just about anything can happen. Don't place your bets on the Ruined Kingdom going perfectly clean. Things can still happen here.
For sure, yes. Yeah, Ruined, not a whole lot of time save or time loss potential. However, I will say I do really enjoy this boss aesthetically. Very cool looking. Very cool boss. I love the soundtrack as well. As a casual player, it's definitely a really neat boss. However, as a speedrunner, it's just kind of a thing that you have to put up with.
Yeah, speedrunners do enjoy being able to manipulate the flow of the game, of course. That's why we do things like go out of bounds and all sorts of crazy things. If a boss has a possibility of skipping certain sections, like the Brutals are a very good example. If we can kind of skip ahead and break the sequence of the phases, we're going to take our advantages and do it. LilAggy, I think maybe doing some flashy movement here, jumping off the edge, not doing any sort of wall jump, things that we might expect from some other runners, but
perhaps just teasing,
living on the edge, shall we say?
Yeah, perhaps just teasing a little bit there. However, not being too risky, which is nice to see. PhilliePhan actually kind of messing up this lava jump here, but gets it on the second try. Kind of a one advantage that 1.2 runners have for one is that you can kind of, there's a little hint art thing here that you can kind of mess around with on 1.2. Kind of help pass the time, I guess, but 1.0
Yeah,
runners
exactly.
do not have that option.
No real time advantage there. Like we said, there's nothing you can do to speed this fight along or optimize it in really any way. But
Yeah.
while you're waiting, you can indeed spend some time messing around with Captain Toad. He does give you 200 coins, and he's fun to dance with, in my opinion. So,
Yeah,
you know,
definitely.
1.2 runners do have the advantage of kind of keeping themselves busy while this fight goes along.
Certainly. So, yeah, pretty much the one real optimization that we have on Ruin that you saw Aggie doing was jumping on top of the dragon while he was still in his invulnerable electric state, which allowed Aggie to grab the little swords out of his head just as they became tangible. So, just a tiny little optimization in a kingdom that is mostly just done as intended.
Yeah, damage boost strategies being kind of the name of the game for some of the bigger boss fights in this any percent run. Using them to our advantage.
And as Dangers was saying, any boss fights that we could skip, we will. However, the developers did a very good kind of hardwiring the game to ensure that you won't be skipping any of these bigger. You definitely cannot skip the Ruined Kingdom boss. The game is just hardwired that even if we did find some way to go straight to Bowser, it wouldn't work out. We'll see that again later in the Bowser's Kingdom. We'll be coming up on 2 brutal fights that unfortunately have no way of being skipped, no matter how you slice it, just because that's the way the game is made.
Yeah, any attempt that we can make to kind of eliminate the linearity of this game is going to make a drastic difference in the future. If we could skip kingdoms, for example. Now, there was one theorized route available to 1.0 runners where you can enter a warp painting in the Lake Kingdom that sends you to a floating island in the Luncheon Kingdom. The only negative downside to that is that the Odyssey actually does not spawn in a kingdom you have not visited previously before. So once you got to Luncheon Kingdom, even if you perform a very difficult jump to get back to the mainland, there is no Odyssey available to you to warp to the next kingdom. So no potential for a routing opportunity there to skip a bunch of the game. You just kind of have to deal with it.
Yeah. Yeah, like I said, developers did a pretty good job with avoiding any sequence break potential in this game. So PhilliePhan now working on that Ruined Dragon boss fight as well, and Aggie making his way through Bowser's. He actually just finished the Shard's Moon, which can be pretty difficult to do optimally, but he pulled it off there pretty nicely.
Yeah, pretty solid movement from Aggie here. Just a little bit of a mistake on the second shard, not getting the dive back that he probably wanted, but not a big deal. Still, of course, holding a commanding lead in this race. And now that Aggie is done with the shards portion, he's going to be moving on to these brutal boss fights that Brisk was talking about. See which one he chooses first. It looks like.
Yeah, Harriet first. I will admit, not the option I would have gone for, but I suppose it is his race. He actually misses a Harriet bomb there. Perhaps some karma for not doing the better topper first strat.
Now, a topper first gang member would say that.
Perhaps. I mean, I like to be
Yeah, as commentators, I suppose, we're not supposed to be biased, but when it comes to Topper versus Harriet first, this is a very serious deal.
Yeah,
so
for sure.
Now, I can understand why you might want to go very scary. So getting him out of the way first does give you a checkpoint flag that you can use to heal yourself. So tactical strategies taking play here. Going Harriet first is the power play, I think. And you can see LilAggy going for that here. Doesn't take damage in the Harriet fight. Probably going to be able to finish off the Topper fight as well. We shall see.
So yeah, in all seriousness, no time difference between these two, which one you want to do first. It's just kind of become a silly little joke amongst the community of which one you like to do first. Personally, I do Topper first just because I find him a bit harder. I like to get him out of the way. Plus, if I take damage, I can grab that quick checkpoint flag, like you mentioned.
Exactly.
But yeah, there's no time difference between them. It's just kind of a little joke amongst the community.
And funny enough, there's actually 2 instances in Bowser's Kingdom that kind of play along that similar line where you have a choice, but the time difference doesn't really make a difference. You're going to see LilAggy after these boss fights. He's going to be jumping in behind a wall, grabbing a moon hidden amongst some crates. Now, this moon can be replaced with one earlier on in the kingdom with no real time difference between the 2 choices. It's basically down to personal preference.
Yeah, for sure. We're going to actually be seeing a little bit of a scary jump here from Aggie. Kind of a blind jump there. Camera angle is not working with you, but Aggie got it there, no problems. Can be pretty scary though, especially since the camera is pointed towards Mario, so you can't really see the platform that you're jumping onto.
Yeah, definitely something you kind of have to lab out, trial and error, do it a couple times yourself to know what you're getting yourself into. Otherwise, you're probably going to take a couple of deaths in big runs.
For sure. So now the perhaps scariest part of the run. I don't know if I'd call it the hardest part of the run, but it's definitely very scary because it's right at the end. Basically, how you're supposed to fight this boss is that it spits little birds at you, little Pokeos. You're supposed to shoot little cannonballs that it spits at you back at it to kind of knock it over and climb up. However, that's incredibly slow. The much faster way is without the Pokeo and hit all these bubbles with Mario. Can be very scary, and if you fall off at any time, it's a pretty big time sink. So we actually will see Aggie going for the target acquired strat here. Let's see. Oh, he actually misses his cap bounce. Takes a fall. Very unfortunate. Like I said, that's going to be a pretty big time sink. He's going to be forced to grab one of these Pokeos. Fortunately, the mech is generous enough to open up its little pegs on the side of its legs that you can climb up, so you don't have to shoot any cannonballs. But yeah, that was pretty unfortunate. Perhaps some time for PhilliePhan to catch up a bit here.
Yep, Philly's going to be grateful for any opportunity he can get to kind of make up some ground. Unfortunately, LilAggy does take a fall on the last phase of the fight, too, which is probably the most punishing. The Mecha Brutal does take a couple of extra steps along the way before you're able to capture a Pokeo and kind of continue with the fight. So that's what makes this Harriet third target acquired strategy so risky that if you miss it, it is probably the worst time loss you can accrue within that boss fight.
For sure. Yeah, the strategy that he was going for there, the target acquired Harriet third strat, was that you basically have to dive on Spewer and get basically an immediate spin pound. If your spin pound is just a tiny bit slow, chances are you're not going to be hitting Spewer, so you have to get some quick dives and do a very fast spin pound in order to hit him. Can be very punishing, as we were saying, if you miss it. However, it is a pretty flashy strat.
Yep, certainly. Not only is it slightly faster, but it is indeed very stylish.
Alright, so we'll now see Aggie heading into the final kingdom, the Moon Kingdom. There is some cool stuff I'd like to point out here. I mean, for the most part, it's kind of a simple kingdom. It can be very scary since it's right at the end, but it's pretty linear. However, there is going to be some cool things going on that we'd like to point out. So first up, we'll be utilizing something that we utilized all the way at the beginning in the Frog Room and Cat Kingdom, which is vectors. He's going to be doing some triple jumps here, changing his direction each time he does a jump in order to get more distance and clear that huge gap in the Moon Kingdom there. Very nice to see. He pulled off very well.
Typically not something you can do with just a regular jump or even just a regular triple, but by utilizing the speed that vectors give you by jumping in a diagonal line like you see Aggie continuing to do here, it does set you up for some extra speed and some extra distance, which does clear the gap.
Yes. So now he just performed the moon skip. It might not have looked like much, but he actually just saved multiple minutes over the intended route. You're supposed to go into an underground moon cave and maneuver through that and make your way out at the top. However, with some precise wall jumps, you can skip that entire cave. Saves a ton of time. It looks pretty simple. However, you actually do have to wall jump at the right spots. You cannot just wall jump anywhere there. Otherwise, it will not work. You actually have to wall jump at some pretty precise spots in order to get that trick to work.
Yeah, and funny enough, we were talking about how things don't seem RTA viable at when the tricks are first introduced. Back when this game was a very, very, very young speed game, obviously it was kind of theorized that skipping the moon cave was going to be the optimal strategy because of how long it took and how how much stuff was going on in there, and the moon physics made it almost seem possible to get all the way up. But it was theorized that that trick was essentially a frame-perfect trick when it was first conceived, and now, of course, we think that's ridiculous because it's so easy.
Yeah.
But it just goes to show that over time, anything is possible.
Yes, and PhilliePhan taking a fall on mech, pretty unfortunate indeed. He is going to have to grab a bird, just like Aggie had to. However, actually missing that little opening to climb up there. But there he goes. Since he fell off on the first phase as opposed to the last phase like Aggie did, perhaps not as punishing, but still very unfortunate.
Certainly going to be losing some time over the optimal strategy. Can't really blame him. Also, getting caught up on the bunny's face there, not really what you like to see. So he's going to have to make another climb up after an opportunity arises.
This is actually the most punishing time to fall off, I think, because the mech is actually running around in a little kind of invincible phase. Yeah, it's definitely unfortunate. He basically just dove on a part of the mech where the hit detection is kind of weird. So as you saw, he kind of just fell right through the mech there. Pretty unfortunate for sure. But he will be climbing back up with the bird and hitting these last two bubbles here.
Meanwhile, Aggie approaching the 2D section of the escape sequence here. Going to be going for the 2D skip. Bonking his head a couple of times, but making it up just fine. Now, not to be undersold here, Aggie is on pace for a 103 run, which is very respectable for a race.
Yes, this is a very good run for him. Not too far off his PB. It's looking pretty nice. And PhilliePhan will now finishing up the Mech Brutal. We'll be heading into Moon. We'll see what time he can finish up on. So, Aggie now entering the last part of Moon here, where you have to hit these 4 pillars. Aggie going for an early pillar strategy. I don't think all his fireballs hit though.
No, it did look like that last fireball did him a bit of a debate. missing just off the side. So he's going to have to throw one last fireball at that first pillar to finish it off. Not a big deal, though. Still going to be ending this race with a very solid time, looking to be in the realm of a very high 103 or potentially low 104.
Yeah, this is looking like a 103 from Aggie. We'll see here in a sec. It's going to be close, but yeah, this will be I believe a 103.57 from Aggie.
Very nicely done.
Very respectable. Definitely a very nice time from Aggie. Especially for a race setting like this, to get a 103 is very respectable indeed.
Yep, showing his prowess. Going to be happy with joining us in the call now is LilAggy himself. LilAggy, how do you feel?
I'm mostly happy, I think. The goal for me was to get a 103, and I guess I did that, although it was awful close at the end.
Yeah.
And you know what? Your execution of this entire run was extremely solid, with the exception of two major mistakes. The first one being the Forks Room death, unfortunately, and the second one being falling off of the Robo-Brute in the end of Bowser's Kingdom. But again, with those mistakes taken out, you could have even potentially had a 102 in this race.
Yeah, maybe. It definitely would have been close. I really felt like I was like on again, off again in terms of like high level performance. I felt like I would get 80% of every kingdom right and then make one mistake that kind of threw off potential gold pace for me. Obviously, sometimes that was a bigger time loss than others, like with Forks Room and Robo-Brood, but
certainly.
It looked like all the big things you pulled off pretty well, like the Snowdram or the FMS Sphinx Clip, Turnip Clip, all performed relatively well.
Yeah, I was pretty happy
even
with those.
Yeah, and even with those pretty big mistakes like falling off the mech and the death and forks, still pulling out a 103, very respectable indeed.
Yeah, was there anything about this run that you know, aside from those big mistakes, or you know, something noteworthy, I guess? Was there anything you were particularly proud of, maybe?
I felt like Night Metro was really, really solid. I had like a perfect Wiggler pattern. That was an extremely fast 2-cycle for me. I felt like there was something else that went really well. Lake was all right. Oh, Luncheon was really good, and then I died in Forks Room.
Aside from the Forks Room, of course, yeah.
So that kind of spoiled things.
I did mention, even with the death and forks, the rest of your Luncheon movement was really solid. Could have been looking at very, very good Luncheon exit or Luncheon segment time if not for that unfortunate death.
Yeah, that's one I've been trying to gold for a long time now. It's always seems just out of reach. Like I'll be on pace and then either Turnip Clip will go awry or Forks Room will happen, or I'll dive off the mountain right at the end.
Yeah.
Just a tough one to finish out.
But it is looking like it's only a matter of time for you.
Yeah, for sure.
Such is the name of the game in Luncheon, though. I find that, you know, it's with it being such a long kingdom, optimizing it to the fullest is, of course, a really hard thing to do. And personally, when I am on a run in Luncheon that gets all the way to, you know, say the very end, and I know I'm on gold pace, sometimes the nerves can get the better of me, and that's when the big mistakes kind of happen, is at the end anyway. The Forks Room, as well as that jump in behind the mountains, can sometimes go awry. So
yeah, absolutely. Especially with Forks Room, it can sometimes feel like luck whether or not Cappy decides to go straight up or diagonal like he chose for me this time. And just that last Forks capture is really sketchy.
Certainly. Well, that being said, you do come away with the W in this race, eliminating PhilliePhan from the tournament, unfortunately for him, but you will be moving on in this loser's bracket to face All New Luke, who just won the previous race before yours. Now tell me, do you have any apprehensions? What do you think about All New Luke?
I like All New Luke a lot. I think he's improved as a runner like very rapidly in the past couple of months. And I commentated in an earlier round race of his in this tournament, so I'm definitely familiar with him. It'll be a good race. I'm excited.
I am excited as well. It could go any way, of course. We are getting down to the dirty thick of it I suppose, when it comes to this tournament. You know, only the strong will survive. We do have some of the top runners in this game remaining in this tournament. The matches are only going to get closer. And if you want a little piece of the action for yourself, you can place your bets on these runners at vi.gg. Type exclamation mark in the chat, or sorry, exclamation mark bet in the chat, or click the banner beneath the stream to find out more information. And as I say that, PhilliePhan is entering the pillar, just about to finish up his race. He is on pace for a high 109, which is, for his PB, I think a very respectable finish time.
Yeah, for sure, especially with some of the unfortunate mistakes that he had. It's looking like a pretty good time for him.
Did get that
sub
first
110.
pillar, it looks like.
Yep, and it is looking like this will indeed be a sub 110 run.
An extremely solid finish from PhilliePhan here, getting those pillars really fast at the end. Just a little bit of trouble with the last one, but managing to land his fireballs, and he's on the final platform, busting away the final rock, and into the pylon he will go to finish up this race. Looking like a 109.
Yeah. So definitely pretty good for his time. Sub 110 finish there. Very nice. Very nice to see.
And we have joining us in the call now PhilliePhan himself. How's it going, PhilliePhan?
There's my mic. Woof.
There he is.
That was an interesting run. I got 3 gold splits somehow, but you know, it all started off really bad with the first bonk on that lantern and cap, and I was like, oh god. So I don't know, just wasn't my night. It's kind of disappointing, but even if I had like my best run with my sum of best, I'm pretty sure I would have still gotten smoked by a minute. So you know, it's take that too.
Yeah. I mean, you did pull out the sub 110. Especially considering some of the mistakes, pretty respect. Yeah.
Yep.
GG's
And you did
to
say
both runners.
you did say you came away with some gold splits, so of course not all is lost. And you know, with something like speedrunning, you do have to take into consideration like the skill level can really vary depending on how much time somebody's able to put into a game. You did take a bit of a break, so you know, getting a sub 110 time with such a long break in between in a tournament setting, of course, is very respectable.
Yeah, the race jitter still gets to me. This is my second race ever in like the professional setting, I guess. So it still gets to me. I think I failed FMS both races that I had, and then the Mecha Brutal is just nothing I'm ever gonna write home about.
Well, you still performed very well, pulling out a very good time. GG's to both runners. LilAggy taking the W. PhilliePhan unfortunately losing the race, but still a very entertaining race. And good runs from both runners.
Thank you very much.
This has been a very exciting day for Super Mario Odyssey races, indeed. Very close races, as well as some surprising results, getting the GSA world record happening today from Chaos Pringle. Very exciting stuff. That is it for Super Mario Odyssey today. We do have one more match coming your way for the Super Metroid tournament after a short intermission. Thank you, Brisquat, for joining me on commentary, and GG's to both of the runners.
Thanks for having us.
Yep. GG's.
GG.